The two Liszt pieces and other material were released by Desmar Records in 1977. The music world rediscovered the infant prodigy who had all but disappeared 50 years earlier. His ninth wife had died, and last December, Nyiregyhàzi moved to San Francisco. To keep faith with himself, he took a room in the Tenderloin area, one of San Francisco's sleazier districts.
But I got used to living in certain districts of certain cities, and it would change my way of life too much if I moved into an entirely different surrounding or neighborhood. But I like to live in districts where everything is accessible, within walking distance, no matter what you want. One can make one's guesses to there. But whatever I want must be within very easy reach, otherwise if there is too much opposition, I'll just give up.
What is it like to start all over at 75? More about the lost genius of the piano after this station break.
$1 Million Bubble.
A junkyard full of laughs. Sanford and Son, weekdays at 4:30 on Channel 4.
The Ford Foundation gave a grant to underwrite the IPA recording project and give Nyiregyhàzi enough money to live on. Nyiregyhàzi came back to New York, the city from which he had fled, broke, derided, his career a shambles, in 1928. Both the Ford Foundation and the IPA had agreed to all of his conditions, which were basically to be left alone. When he had first played at Carnegie Hall, his performance was so successful that 2 more performances had to be scheduled to accommodate the demand for tickets. That was long ago. Now he and Richard Kapp of the Ford Foundation were on their way to get something for Nyiregyhàzi that he had not had for 40 years. A piano. The fact that he agreed to go to New York and pick a piano was considered a major accomplishment by the people who worked with him on the recording project. And if he moves back to New York, which he may, he says he will at least consider letting a piano be put in his apartment. But he wouldn't practice on it because he never practices. He does, in fact, none of the things you would expect, and a great many you would not. He has written more than 700 compositions, but he will not allow them to be performed by others, and so far as we could learn, he has never performed them in public. At 75, he is terrified by audiences and fears criticism. He does not like to meet people and prefers to spend his day sitting alone in his room, drinking bourbon and thinking. But he did choose his piano. It was shipped to San Francisco for the March recording session. What makes Nyiregyhàzi different is the strength of his playing. John Kilgore, the project recording engineer.
His dynamic range, his range of loudness to softness is so tremendous that it's very difficult to fit it on tape. On the one hand, his very loudest passages are very close to the distortion levels of these machines, And on the other hand, his softest passages are down in the noise of them. And this gets to be even more of a problem when you make a record, because it means that you have to allow a lot of space for the grooves, and it means that you can't fit too much music on one side of the record.
Erwin can play at maximum volume, and it's still not harsh. And this somehow seduces you into a position of accepting his interpretation. He views all music in polyphonic terms, sort of with several levels of lines going on at the same time, melodic lines. And to accomplish this, he often plays in a manner that's not exactly as notated in the composer's scores. All other pianists expend much more effort to get much less than Erwin. Somehow he's figured out intuitively a system of balances and weights and angles for his fingers and arms that produces the maximum kind of sound that he wants with the minimum of effort. One would think that he broke strings and literally that the piano would burst into flames sometimes when he's done having his way with it. But it's not so, and although he does have a tendency to drive pianos out of tune, before the first session, our tuner and I were banging on the piano with our fists, trying to simulate sounds as big as Erwin might make, so that we could have the level set on the tape machines. And we did break several strings. And the next day he came in and played on that piano and played Liszt's Funerai and several other pieces, making sounds much bigger than we could create with no difficulty. So there is some mystery to how it is that he does these things.
However he does them, his music is now on tape, and the IPA is negotiating for a record release.
Is that the one? I thought they were about 18.
It doesn't have anything to do with real time. You know, it has its own dimension. It doesn't have anything to do with...
You love to pair off strong contrasts,
Oh, yeah,
don't you?
I love contrast. Oh, you know, life.
Life.
Full of contrast. Terrific contrast.
If we start...
That day's recording seemed to please Erwin Nyiregyhàzi, but no one is willing